Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the country, around the world, and whatever time you're watching this. And maybe this is a replay. Today, we are doing another one of our Meet the Developer series, where I sit down and have a chat with a long-time developer and just ask them a few questions. How did they get into programming and all that kind of stuff? And today, I have with me in the studio live Nirav. And now I'm going to, I asked him how to pronounce his name, so I'm going to make it sound like I really know how to say it, but I did have to check. Nirav Kaku. Is that saying it the right way? You said it sounds like it's said by Japanese people.
It is true, Ian. I do. My surname, although I'm from India, my surname is widely famous in Japan. There's a famous physicist in America called Michio Kaku. Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah. So
That's bizarre.
it
My
is
name,
bizarre.
my last name Barker is quite popular in the United States as well. But even so, every time when I go to the doctors or something, because of the British accent, I live in the United States. They always say, "Can you spell that for me?" And I have to say it Barker, because if I don't
Or
do it like a pirate, they go BAA. No, Barker. I don't know. It's an American name. There are probably millions of
hey,
Barker. Yeah,
Hey,
it's
listen, when it comes to accents, I totally understand, right? In India, thanks to the colonization from, English, the number of accents we have from north of India to south of India, I've
oh
heard them
yeah.
all, right? So,
Well,
so yeah,
my generation was probably one of the first generations in the UK who grew up in a very multicultural society. So it was quite normal for us to go to school with kids whose parents were from Mumbai, although
yeah,
in those days it was still had the anglicized name of Bombay. But,
yeah,
Mumbai, we had Sri Lankans, we had Pakistanis, we had lots of Sikhs. I shared a house with 5 Sikhs
yeah.
for a long
Oh
time,
wow.
actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Punjabi. Their mums used to make me the most amazing food. And they're always like,
Food.
"Hey, is that guy eating the food? Wow, it's really spicy. I can't eat that." I'm like, "No, I'm fine." But,
No, yeah,
many Brits, there's a very close affinity, to all parts of India and Pakistan. It's weird because I think to many Indians, a British accent is something they're familiar with. But
yeah.
the more fashionable Indian want to speak with an American accent because that's where the fashion is. It's like they're
Yeah, but
obviously
here's
more
the
sophisticated, because they got American accents.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like for example, I grew up speaking the Queen's English, so to speak, right? And then I lived in Canada for a few years, and
Oh,
my R's started rolling, right? I started and
erotic.
and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, when I talk, sometimes I speak certain words with a North American accent, and then there are certain words that I speak with British accent, and then of course there's the underlying Indian accent that's always there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is kind of the base accent for both these accents, right? And but here's the thing: I always write in the Brit spelling. So for me,
British
color
spelling.
is yeah, exactly,
Well,
COLOUR.
the weird thing
Yeah.
is, I've lived in the United States since 2009, and I became a citizen in 2013. And when I immigrated into the United States, I made a conscious decision to start spelling everything the American way. And
Okay.
so as a Brit, it's weird because I spell
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
but and I see other people writing it, and I'm like, that person must be, they've got association with Britain because they've spelt it, that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look,
Yeah.
you're a developer, which is why I'm talking to you. You've worked for us in the past at Embarcadero. You're now back working for your own company. I'm going to put a QR code up. Let me just do that up here. So this QR code here, if people scan this, it goes straight to your website. And I'm going to put a little tag across the bottom as well so that people can see it. Just 1 second. Dry my thing. So we talked about this, and you said Vimovyaa. Vimovyaa is
Vimovyaa, yeah.
Vimovyaa. That's
Vimovyaa.
it. Yeah. See, I always have to check because my brain likes to mangle people's names and all the time. And you get. Funny enough, the ones I'm always okay with the Russian websites. I don't know why, but I seem to actually say them properly. It's weird, but yeah. So what is it? What kind of things do Vimovyaa do? What's a typical kind of I don't know, job or task or project? Do you even do projects, or is it you have
Yeah,
a product or something? Or,
yeah, yeah. No, no, absolutely. So, I mean, my company is primarily dedicated to consulting, IT consulting, and clearly, the legacy that we have is Delphi. So we do everything Delphi. We'll help customers migrate from an old legacy application. We'll extend that existing application to mobiles, other devices, other operating systems, thanks to Delphi, because it allows you to do that so easily. Uh,
mm,
we'll write web services, high performance web services. So basically, I would say more or less everything on the enterprise side, which enables medium to large businesses to sort of get their business going, right? Uh, what I can safely say, we don't do games because it's just not what we geared up for. But everything else, yeah, I think and personally, I would say I also love understanding different businesses. So not only do I just do tech development for them, but I actually can get my head into a business and even suggest sort of business processes, right? That can
mm,
sort of make something more efficient, right? Just because, you know, sometimes, customer comes to you and says, hey, I need a software developer for this. And I would go ahead like, okay, you do need a software, but why do you have to do it like this? You can re-engineer your process and, it can be more efficient like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I do.
What sort of region do you work in? Because I remember before when we've because I've known you quite a while now. You've said things like, "Oh yes, I was in Goa." I'm like, "Oh, okay," and I know that was like for specific purpose. You were going to meet someone there, but is there a region that you specifically deal with? I mean, is it like
Yeah.
all the world, or is
Yeah.
it very specific regions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no. So here's the thing, right? Like, for example, we've done work with the US. We've done work with UK. We've done work with Australia, Germany, Malaysia, Singapore, India, of course. So I guess in today's day and age, there's some clients, who we've done work for years, and I've still not met them physically, right?
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so you can safely say that I can, I pretty much work with, the end, all the hemispheres of the world,
It's funny
depending
you
on
should
where.
say you
Yeah,
should say about working with people for years and not meeting them. I actually went to an event in Portugal a couple of weeks ago, and it was a partner event, and I'm there representing the company. You know what I do.
yeah,
I'm the Delphi guy. And
yeah,
uh, and I went there and I met for the first time some people there I've worked with for a long time. And some of
yeah,
them I'd known for decades and never actually met in person. I'm like, hey, and met up. But the point is now the world is much smaller. It's very common in the UK for people to outsource, their projects to India, Pakistan, and Brazil is another big outsourcing place now as well.
great.
And it's a sad fact, actually. In some ways, it's kind of a bad thing because it's the reflection of the difference in the economies. The Western world, like the UK, parts of Europe and the United States. Obviously, the cost of living there is astronomical, and with it comes those salaries. But people wisen up to the fact that there's a lot of great talent out in India and places like that where they can outsource effectively.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. I mean, in that sense, and I also feel that I do know that outsourcing has its own kind of backlash also because it does, in some sense, to be fair, take some jobs away from the local economy. So one has to be sort of cognizant about that fact also. But like you said, the world is just becoming, it has become a much smaller place. It's just, we are just so much more connected, right? And, the internet is getting better. Uh, I'm just waiting to see how this whole AI, sort of turns out, right? Because there's a lot of,
That's the
yeah,
ultimate outsourcing because they're
yeah,
outsourcing it
yeah.
away from the human race. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's something that I would say I won't say I'm worried about it, but definitely very interested to see how it pans out, especially when when with Delphi 12.2, right? When you have integrated different
the
AI engines to
capability to do AI, yeah.
exactly, right?
Well,
All you have
actually,
to
there's a very interesting point about that, and that is that I was involved in the discussions about putting that feature in the product because I can be opinionated, and
yeah.
and the point is that I see it from a developer's point of view, um, and our customers, to me, a lot of our customers are very conservative about what they're going to do. It's very typical to go to a Delphi customer and they will not upgrade basically based on superstition in some ways. Oh no, we wait for the odd numbered version of which it doesn't make any
Really?
sense. I get where they're coming from, and
Oh
but
wow.
also for me it was quite important. I felt that we were when someone's code. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again because it does kind of emphasize our Embarcadero's point of view about developing. When someone sits down and they're in front of their computer and they're typing away, and they open up the IDE, they open up Rad Studio, or they open up Delphi or C++ Builder, that's their tool of work. That is that's their hammer and nails, their drill, their digger, or crane, or whatever you want to call it. That is their
Yep.
work tool. And it's a very personal experience for developers. It's a
Yes.
very one-to-one interactive. I don't know about you, but when you're coding, it's inside there and it comes out
Yep.
through my
Yep.
fingertips and into
Yep.
the keyboard.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
to me, I wanted to put the point across that personal experience is something that I believe we need to really value, and I think we do. If we're going to
Yeah.
put AI in it, we also need to understand that the intellectual property is in that source code, in those thoughts that have now become a program. And it's no good going and having AI trained on your code base if what you're doing is, if you go and say, you have a secret, technology that you put in your applications. If the AI is trained on that secret technology, great, it can help you with it. But if that's a general AI and it's going out to Chat GPT or whatever, there's nothing to stop another guy sitting in front of a keyboard who's your competitor, and all of a sudden he's got your secret recipe at his fingertips because he can say, "Tell me how to write a routine that does something very, very cool with." I don't know, video
Yeah.
compression technology or something like that. And
Mm.
all of a sudden,
Right.
ChatGPT goes, sure, here's a routine that does it. And now your uniqueness in your code has been disseminated. So we wanted to make sure that, first of all, it was off by default, that the AI is not turned on. Secondly, you have multiple choices. You can, if you don't like OpenAI or you don't trust them, you can use Claude or something like that, or you can use Olama. So it's offline, so it never
Yep.
goes out to cloud. And that to us was a very key differentiator about AI. Just one second. I'm just going to shut my blind because one of the benefits of living in Texas is it's always very sunny and warm.
Oh,
When
it
we're
is.
down, I have like a little thing that's like that, and then there you go. So I don't have
Okay.
that. It's still there, but it'll do. It's the joys of
Yeah.
Look at it. See, if I sit back
Yeah.
here, then it's fine. It's okay. So, so that was our definition of AI, is we didn't want to, put people in a difficult position where they were training your competitor in AI. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Also,
I'm,
I
I'm glad.
also have a. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, because it is something that I personally don't think it's going to affect you directly. I don't think it's going to affect me directly immediately. Although, a lot of my job is social. It's about writing text, producing
Mm-hmm.
blog articles, producing webinars like this one, and
Yeah.
so in some ways AI can help with that, because it could summarize our videos, which we do use AI summation for some transcripts, but I still think that right now, although the AI is getting better, it's still not, it's obviously AI. It doesn't create that creativity. But I think we're probably a couple of years away before it will be so good that it may impact people like me as writers and editors. I
Right.
use automation to, make sure that when I'm writing something, it doesn't sound stupid.
Right, right, right. No, no, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, and you know what? I have a sort of a different perspective, right? Like I find myself, I find myself, thinking about in in general, thinking about philosophies in life, the typical Eastern way of, approach to life. It's probably part of my upbringing, where, about meditation and all of that. And, an interesting thing about, when you were speaking about that, the code is here and it's coming, on the screen via your fingertips, right? Uh, the immediate word I thought of was flow, right? Like, when you're writing code, when you're writing something creative, when you're engaging yourself in that activity, you're in a flow, right? And that flow is almost
Absolutely.
like, it's almost like meditation, right? Like you're razor focused, you're and you come, the whole experience of writing code or creating something, even if it's a routine that, your logic, it's an enriching experience, right? My One of the concerns that I would have is, that it takes away the joy of creating, right? It's something, something as, say, for example, as mundane as, writing a function of adding two integers, right? There's one way you could question it, right? But the other way is you can apply your mind and say, okay, how do I write, right? And that the joy of discovery of, discovering a logic and putting it on, in code and seeing it work, right? Uh,
Mm.
One concern I would have is that it would take away the essence of, you know of being satisfied with some creation, right? Because now it's so easy just to ask for what you want and you just get it, right? It's instant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, it doesn't promote critical thinking at, because the answers are all out there. But I think critical thinking is where, the human self-worth lies, right? Critical thinking, finding answers, discovering something, inventing something, right? So that's the reason I'm very interested to see how will AI, sort of with it, all the power that it has, right? uh, if we use it the right way, it can actually catapult the human race to a different level. But if we do
Yeah.
not, and I'm just afraid that, we are more likely to, do the wrong stuff than the right stuff. It may actually sort of, sort of, you know, be bad for us in the long term, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I
that's, yeah.
absolutely do agree, and the reason that is kind of poignant for me, and I've mentioned this in other webinars. My daughter's a graphic designer. She went to college. She also learned Korean as well because she's crazy. But
Yeah.
she and she's American as well. She's not Korean in any way, shape, or form. But the key moment for her was when she went and for a job. I think it was as an intern, actually, working at a large organization as a graphic designer. And she was kind of like the lowest rung of graphic designer, but even so, they were giving her jobs to do. And the very first day she was there, they said, okay, you need to be using AI to create the work. And she was crushed because she'd gone off and done all these studies about typography, color theory, she's an amazing artist, very talented graphic designer. And really the job had been reduced to generating prompts for AI to start off with. That would be the first thing you do, is use the AI to create a logo or image automatically, and then you tweak it as a graphic designer, which was a real revelation for her, and actually a bit of an eye-opener for me as well. But I think that I can see how certain jobs are going to be threatened by AI. I think that right now, the uses of AI I've seen people using it for in development have been to help them produce a routine as a starting point. So I see a lot of SQL queries, for example, SQL queries. It's brilliant for that. If you say, here's my database, here's what the tables are, give me a SQL query that, I don't know, gives me the average of a particular column and then joins it together with this table, and I'll come back with a query that does it. That's really useful, because doing that by hand is, first of all, really boring, and second, it's very time consuming. It can take you hours to running it, getting it right, blah blah blah. But with the use of AI, I can do that. But coding wise, most Delphi guys I've seen, and girls, have been using it to say, create me a class that is a person class, for example, and then create another class that is a skills class, and then write some glue code or create an interface for those classes, which actually is very good, because it is like having a junior programmer. You can go off and say to the junior programmer, create these classes for me, or you can do it yourself. Well, obviously, if you've got a junior programmer, they're cheaper, so you get them to do it. Well, with AI, it's probably about the same cost, because even the ones you pay, where you pay a fee per usage or whatever, by the time you add it up, I think they've pitched it just right, that it's cheaper to use the AI than it is to go and get a junior person to do it. And plus, it's as reliable as a junior intern. That's my experience, that when it works, it sometimes can work very well and save you a lot of time, but you've got to watch it, because it's like giving it to a junior programmer and go, write this part of the program, and when it comes back, you start running it and you think, oh, it looks okay, and then all of a sudden you realize there's loads of things wrong with it. The junior
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And AI lies like a pro, right? Like,
I love that. Very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've done that. Like, I've, just for the kicks, I said, okay, I know what my routine is, and I'll like say, okay, write me a code, and it actually gives me. If I look at it at first glance, it looks like, oh, wait a minute, that code seems like it could work, and then moment you put it and you compile it, half the things in the code don't exist in the RTL, right? Because it's
Yeah,
just
like,
making it
what's
up.
this function doesn't exist. Like, oh yeah, sorry, I imagined that. It's like, you're drunk, and they do call it hallucinating, which I think is probably an appropriate thing to say. But yeah, it's very common. I think it's an area I hope they're going to work on, because it doesn't just affect Delphi; it affects other languages. I've seen other people, C# programmers say, this is nonsense. This is just made this bit up. It's great. Well, I'm glad we talked about AI, because that wasn't really on our list of things to talk about. But that's good. You're a Delphi. Would you call yourself a Delphi guy, or would you say you're a C++ guy, or would you say you're other things? I mean, what would you term yourself?
Yeah, that's not even going to take like a millisecond for me to answer. I'm a Delphi guy.
Okay.
Because
Stout. Yeah. Delphi.
yeah,
Stout. Yeah.
I'm a Delphi guy.
how long have you used Delphi? Were you one of these people that
Oh
started with
wow.
Turbo
Oh
Pascal? I
yeah.
know
No.
you're as old as me,
Yeah.
so
No. No. I started using Delphi. I think in 1996. Right. That was the
oh
first
right,
time.
so
Yeah.
Delphi
And you
one and
remember
two.
that I'm from India. So if Delphi 2 was released in 1995, I'm not sure. It probably got to India in 1996, right? And
Right,
we
so
just
probably a little bit later than that, but yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean, a lot of people started with Turbo Pascal, so
yeah.
you caught up. I never used
Yeah,
Turbo Pascal. That's
yeah, me
brief.
too. I've never used Turbo Pascal. I started
Yeah,
directly with Delphi, Delphi 2, I think.
right,
Um,
yeah.
I was it 1996 or was it 1997? I can't remember. So long back, but I think it was. I would
Put it
say,
this way, it's longer than we want to remember and longer than many people's lifetimes. So yeah.
yeah. So about 1996, 1997 was the first time I actually got my sort of fingers or let's say toes dipped with Delphi. But here's the thing, yeah, I have an interesting story to that, right? The reason I'm in love with Delphi, or I fell in love with Delphi, was VC++. Uh, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, VC++ is the reason I fell in love with Delphi. And the story goes that I was a teenager. I was just bumming around. I wasn't really doing much with my coding skills, so to speak. So uh, uh, I had, my father got me when I was a kid, say 7, 8 years old. My father got me a computer called ZX Spectrum. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes,
It's
yes, I know the Spectrum. Yeah, I've met
yeah,
St. Clive Sinclair actually, who
yeah.
invented it. Yeah, he's
Oh wow, okay, well,
well,
oh wow,
I
okay.
lived near Cambridge, and he was based in Cambridge. And long story, very odd guy, very smart guy, but very strange.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So Sinclair, right? I mean, Sinclair's ZX Spectrum, and 48 kilobytes of memory, no hard drive, one box. You've seen it, right? You attach it
yeah,
to your
yeah.
TV,
I
and
had a
BASIC is the only
ZX70
language. Yeah,
before
yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So basic or ZX Spectrum is actually when I started writing code, right? I remember. Here's the thing, you never forget your first program, right? And the first software I ever wrote, I was in standard fourth. I think I was about five. I think 5 or 6, maybe. I can't. No, maybe.
Really? As young as
Maybe
that?
yeah, yeah, maybe 7. I don't remember how old I was when I was in my fourth standard. That's my fourth grade, right? And I wrote a software that would create random circles on TV, right? So random size circles with different colors. So you just see
Uh-huh.
concentric lines one
Yeah,
after the other, just
yeah,
random, right?
yeah.
That was my first software. It was an 8 line basic code. I remember it so vividly that I don't think I can ever forget. I can even remember the lines. I can even remember the TV and everything, right? So and I was so excited, right? And I think that was the time I that was my first introduction to programming. Uh, and I think because I was introduced to the computer as a toy, uh, you know, it was, it's always been fun in my psyche, right? In the back of my mind, it's always been fun, right? So
That's
I think,
exactly how I saw it. I mean, to
yeah,
me, I was 50, well, 14, I think, and I've told the story before about how it happened for me, so I won't repeat that again. But it's all I ever
yeah,
wanted to do, and I never ever regret being a developer. To anybody that's watching this, if you ever think about being a programmer, because this is Meet the Developer, it's one of a few people we're meeting. I can tell you, I think it's the best job in the world. I personally think that uh, it can be the most frustrating job and the most satisfying job on the same day. When you've been sitting there for 3 days and you think, I am so stupid, I can't spot this bug, I am so dumb, I am so dumb. Everybody else around you seems to be the smartest people on the planet, and you are an idiot. And then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, and you type in the thing, and it works. You go, I am God, I am the king of everything. You know what I mean? And it's that, you know what I mean? Like, you're a developer, you get it, right? It's
yeah, yeah. I get
that
it, man. I
kind
get
of
it. And
swing of
yeah,
emotions. And of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
the reality is you're just working in a job that happens to be problem solving for a living. But yeah, it's funny. It's
yeah. So yeah, no, no. So here's the thing, right? So I kind of did that, and then then my father got me, a PC, Pentium or x86, right? It was
uh,
it was a 1 MB RAM, 40 MB hard drive. They used to make sounds. You know how they were, right?
yeah, beep on
And
beep.
that's when I really got into programming. I started writing code in GW Basic. The the first database software that I actually wrote was a software for my mom to manage her house expenses, which she never used, of course, because I was just writing for the fun of it. She was never going to use it. She's like, I don't need
Hey,
this. I've got this.
it's the
Yeah,
thought that counts, as they say. But what sort
right.
of projects? What sort of projects do you work on now? Do you think? I mean, or what have you worked on in the past? And do you have any pet projects as well of your own?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what I mean, see, like I said, most of the times that I work on is enterprise applications, right? Like I just love database applications. I just love, writing enterprise applications because, and I just love extracting utility out of a business process via data. It's just something that I love. Um, I would say the best part of writing applications for me personally, right? Personally, is actually writing the frameworks, right? I love writing frameworks, right? So uh, uh, you've heard of Delphi MVC, right? DMVC framework, right? Which is
DMVC,
basically,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
DMVC, right?
It's
Uh,
it's one of those projects that everybody
yeah,
has to at least know about, even if they don't use
yes,
it. Yeah,
correct. So I've been using Delphi MVC for I don't know, I think since 2012, right? It's been over 12 years right now. When I started using it, right, I was just using it for writing my controllers, right, which is basically REST APIs and all of that. And but because I'm an enterprise developer and I need to work with data, at that point of time, DMVC did not have active record, right? Which is basically an extent or a part of the core library that would interact with the database, right? Now, so what I did was, and I didn't know Daniel was, working on it, right? So I was developing my own active record for DMVC parallelly, right?
right.
And I used Spring, and I used my own version, and I was using it for 2 years, and suddenly, after 2 years, Daniel releases, the new version with active record, and I'm looking at it, I'm looking at active record, the code, and I'm looking at my code, and I'm like, I said, I can't believe it. It seems like we've exactly done the same stuff, right? He's used attributes,
It
generics, all
happens.
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, did my code leak? And of course it did not, right? I mean, because no one was using it outside my organization. I was using,
yeah.
and I looked at his active record like, that's a great library. I mean, that's a great way of doing things, right? Because he still continuously develops the
Well, yeah,
framework.
I mean, he's very
But
well respected. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And what I did was, and I got in touch with him, and I like, Daniel, I said, hey, look at this. This is my framework, and you've just like, you've written a better version of it. I'm going to dump my framework and going to start using yours, right? Because it's all about using them, right? Because I was just using it for my needs, right? And but Daniel was actually, or is actually, writing it for everyone's needs, which is, and I find that tremendously respectable. Uh, so that's why, when he asked me to review his book on, Delphi MVC framework, yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, I'm
I
on it,
forgot
buddy.
about that. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's your secret superpower. See, I didn't know about
Uh,
that.
yeah. So no. So I got mentioned in that book as, as part of, but I think it was just, it was just mute. I have tremendous respect for
You know,
Daniel Teddy,
this
and it's
does
just,
this does happen sometimes. Sometimes you can put two coders on a piece of code and say solve this problem, and actually they both come up with almost exactly the same
almost.
code. There's some differences, but mostly the general principle of. And the thing is, There are some people like NASA and a few other organizations that actually do that deliberately. What they do is they over engineer it by getting two people or more to actually solve a problem, because the one that comes out of it that works is the one that you're going to adopt. But sometimes you'll get three people that will do exactly the same solution, which means it's probably the right solution. As long as you
Correct.
test in there and all the rest of it. If three people went, this is how to do it, then it's probably the right one. And in the case of what you did, it shows, first of all, you know what you're talking about,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
the developer. But secondly, the solution that Daniele came out with as well, and yourself, was the right one, because it's so close to each other that it. I mean, it's probably not even an obvious solution. But the thing is, it was just one of those things where you say, this is what it needs to be, and so it has to be that. I say this to people who are not programmers. The thing about software development is you can do it in any way you like. You can lay out screens in any way you like. But the thing about software development is it's very black and white. Your code has to work. It has to compile. Otherwise, you've failed. If the compiler goes and spits out your code, there's no program. So
Yeah.
if there's got to be a semicolon at the end of the line, there has to be a semicolon.
Yeah,
And
to be semicolon.
I like that predictability. I like that kind of thing. But what I also like is there's still an element of creativity in that coding. Even I've worked in some software houses that've got a list like that, like a big list of all the rules about what you're supposed to do in the code. We don't do this. We never use the with statement. We always indent by this many characters. But even within that rigid set of rules, there's still you in the code. I say to people, who are not developers, it is a very, very personal thing when you write a program. I just finished a project at the end of September. I've worked with that company for 27 years off and on. And they've had other people work on it, but it's actually quite an emotional thing, because that code's like your child. You have produced things. It's because of that creativity, the code becomes part of you. And I think that's why it's important that when people are going to engage with you as a company, they get you. You've got that kind of empathy, because if they like you as a person and if they find you trustworthy, then 90% of that thing that makes Nirav also emerges in the code as well. And I know you on a professional level, obviously, and I know what you do is good. I know you know what you're talking about. I know you're a decent coder, and so does Danielle, because he like you say, he asked you to write words in the book as well. That's an endorsement of you as an individual as well, because there are people out there. I think it's not a secret that Linus Torvald, he would be the first to say he's a little bit of a difficult personality, right?
Yeah.
And
I've heard. I don't know him personally, but I've heard.
Yeah, I don't think he'd disagree with that summation of who he is. But nobody would doubt that his code is genius. He's a genius level.
Genius.
But in the software industry, there are lots of different types of personalities. The idea of that geek with their spectacles stuck together with Band-Aid or something like that, and what they call them pocket protectors, that's not true anymore. And I think also the idea of a long-bearded, long-haired developer is also a little bit out of fashion now. I think the industry is filled much more with people who are more well-rounded individuals, and you're proving the point in this conversation. So
thank you.
I don't know about you, but when I finished for the day, I don't play games. Okay, I've said this to plenty of people in the past. I don't play computer games, because I think I sit in front of a computer, it's to earn money, and I've done that for 40 years on and off. I think 40 years. I'm older than I look. And do you have any pet projects? Is there anything where you go, oh, you know what, I really want to write, or do you just say, no, that's it, I'm finished working, I'm gonna go? Do you ever sort of sit there and code something just for the hell of it, or for your fun?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't know if I have sort of a pet project that like I go to, like one project that I go to continuously. I don't have that thing because, you know, I'm, uh, I'm a lover of variety, right? Like what I like to do is I like to understand new things every day, right? Um,
Right.
uh, I've already mentioned that I love writing frameworks, right? So one of the things that I love to do on a daily basis is optimize my framework, right? Like I just love the idea that if I can write almost zero code and if I can get the same results, right? I just love that idea, right? So um, I mean, I have again, I have a sort of a home brewed framework that runs on top of DMBC and Active Record.
Oh,
So first it
nice.
was
Yeah.
only DMBC, so now I have a home brewed DMBC Active Record framework where literally the backend guys, my team of backend guys, that are guys who write microservices, all of that, they can spit out, uh, you know, uh, self-balancing, multi-threaded microservices with almost 2 to 3 lines of code in the unit, right? Because everything's inherited, right? That's all they have to do. They just have to supply the
That's
model.
lovely.
They don't even have to, yeah, they don't even have to write any CRUD operations, nothing. It just works, and that basically gives my UI guys a hard time because they are always falling behind, right? He's like, you guys, they said that the backend guys are just going too fast for us, right? Like we can't keep up,
Yeah.
uh, because
Yeah.
the customer says that I need I need this functionality. The backend guy spits it out in like a day, and then the UI guy is scrambling to sort of make the UI so that everything fits in. All the
Yeah.
data is collected, all the data is pushed, validated and all of that. So and because I'm a backend guy myself, because I mean, I, 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 I think I'm a decent UI, like I have a decent understanding of UI, but I don't think it's great. I'm definitely not, but I'm highly optimized on the backend side, right? Like so
Mm.
and the thing is that because all my energy goes in the back end, it's always the front end that gets very little of my sort of my
Yeah.
love,
It's
so to speak.
you'd be surprised. There's actually that's actually quite common that people are one or the other, and I think I always scored points in the past that I'm actually both. So I specialize in user interfaces, and that's kind of my thing. I like to make things look beautiful, and I like to make things do cool stuff and stuff. But I also like the back end as well. Let me ask you a question then. So if I think the answer there was no. You don't really have a pet project, but you've got this own thing. But if you were to like suddenly win the lottery, or some rich uncle you've never heard of, suddenly goes "Ugh," and dies and leaves you, so much money that no longer you have to work. Would you go to the beach and go and just lie on the beach all day, or would you go and do something else? Or I mean, what would you do if there was no incentive to actually do it financially? The program, would you still
Yeah,
go?
yeah. No, no. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Like, first of all, I mean, just a small trivia. I'm a mountains person. I'm not a beach person. So, if at all, if I had to go
Uh,
somewhere, I would go to the mountains, right?
Me too. I love the mountains.
Yeah, mountains. Okay, so that's one. However, uh, if I did not have to work for a living, if I not have to sort of code, I think my deepest interest lies in writing. I would still write systems, I would still write code, but I think it would be for solving world problems, right? Like for example,
Charitable stuff,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. I mean, for example, let's forget the world, right? Like let's talk about India, right? India is a majorly agrarian country, right? Like I mean, there are lots of farmers, a lot of people depend on agriculture for for their sustenance, right? And
Sure.
it's pretty much like farmers in the US. How they're struggling, right? Sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
and what I'd like to do is, my go-to project would be to sort of write a system that can predict. what kind of crops are coming in every sort of small farms, right? There's some, there are few acres, there's 1 acre, there's 1.5 acre, and sometimes the entire family is surviving on the produce of the farm and what they make out of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
The problem with India is that middlemen make all the money. The guys who actually do the work, they get very little money, right? And sometimes people are in dire straits. So, there's nothing wrong with the middleman making money, but I really would want the poor people to make more money, for their hard work. So, I think the project that would really take is to write that kind of software that can optimize and make sure that the farmers also get a decent
their
amount of
fair share. Kind of. I
yeah,
mean,
their fair share.
there are some of these programs out there like Fair Trade Coffee and things like that you see in America, and but I think you're absolutely right. I've always said this as well, that if I suddenly got lucky, and time is running out for you, I'm not getting any
Yep.
younger, so but I think that I would be the same. I couldn't imagine a situation where I wouldn't program. It's my skill, and one of my skills anyway, but my main core skill, and I think I would want to be a force for good, and I think that's what you're saying, is that you would choose to be a force for good. I think it's an admirable thing. I absolutely agree with you. I grew up as a small boy in England in a farming community, and when I grew up, I was in a village, very different situation to an Indian village, I have to say, but even so, it was still in the 1970s. I was born in London in the 1960s and then moved to this farming village. And when I was a kid, you walk through fields with cows in and sheep, and we would walk past the horses. And I remember very vividly walking past cattle sheds where they would have them in the morning to be milked. And we used to go up and put our fingers through they got like these wooden boards, put our fingers through, and the cows would lick your finger. And cow tongues are weird, very strange animals, cows. But I don't know why, we must have got horrendous diseases that I never remember. But anyway, but that kind of lifestyle for us kids, we didn't watch TV. We were always thrown out the house, and we were completely safe. There was very little chance there would be a problem. You wouldn't get run over. There was not an awful lot of traffic on the road in the 1970s, but that was what we did. And that lifestyle, that kind of agrarian sort of backed lifestyle is almost vanished in the UK. There's still a few places in the south and in Wales and Scotland, but yeah, it's a shame. But it's nice, to see places like India where there is still that kind of, and I think it creates a good sense of community as well. That kind of community where the food is grown locally or near locally for the local people is not a bad thing. And I think wanting to help those guys out, I think that's an admirable kind of condition.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, in India we say that you should always eat food that's grown locally because that food is designed to help in that environment, right? You should always have seasonal fruit. You should
Yeah,
always have seasonal food, and you should always have local food, right?
yeah,
Because that's what makes sense. So we do that, and yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
See, I don't have a problem with people outsourcing, the coding. But when they outsource the growing of the food, then I think the whole country is going a very poor direction. I remember once picking up some green beans in England when I lived in England, and green beans, they're just a staple thing that grow everywhere. You literally could throw some beans on the ground, they would grow a great big bean plant. That's how conducive the wet weather in England is to growing beans. And I remember going to the grocery store and picking up a packet of beans, and they were grown in Kenya, which is 4,000 or 5,000 miles away. Why? First of all, why were they flown over? The ridiculous cost involved. I mean, I'm sure they had one big plane that was full of beans or something, but secondly, why were they not grown in England? Is it really that expensive to grow them locally? How much fresher are they? When people grow vegetables at home, they always go, my God, these beans taste amazing. Yes, because I got
Amazing.
them out of the ground just now.
Correct.
Of course they're fresh. But the ones from Kenya, no disrespect to Kenya, but you've flown those several thousand miles. They're going to be a day old before you get them, and that's if they are not stored in a warehouse before. So anyway, we could go on about
Yeah.
global crisis. I'm all for the idea of outsourcing. I think that that's one of the strengths of. That's how I think most Americans and most Brits come in contact with Indian developers. But actually, Oracle has a headquarters near me. It's absolutely full of Indian guys and girls, and there's a reason for that. Yes, I get it. I mean, there probably is economically, easier for them to persuade someone from, India to take a lower wage, but they are paid a proper wage. They're not paid like there's a limit on how cheap people can go.
Yeah.
But more importantly, that's not the main definition. The main definition is the amount of talent that's there. I don't think Americans realize how big India is. It's absolutely huge, and it's full of people. And India is not a backward country in any shape or form. The educational standards in India are extremely high, and people like yourself, exist and prove the point that you're a talented coder. I've dealt with you in the past in all sorts of situations. I know you know your stuff. And I think that it's an area of the world that is full of talent, and we don't talk about it often enough. And I'm glad to have you on. So, I think we've talked enough for a while. What's next for you? You're carrying on running your business, and what's next for Nirav, shall we say?
Oh man, that's such a sort of open-ended question, but I would say if I mean, I'll answer it. Until my rich uncle dies and leaves me, the billion. I think what I really
I know
aim to do. I
people.
mean,
I can make it happen. No, I'm joking. I don't know anybody.
uh,
I
uh,
wish.
but yeah,
'Cause I'm
no, no,
quite rich for
but
people, right?
I would say that uh, uh, that I okay. So here's the thing. I really love Delphi, right? Like I mean, I really do love Delphi, like as the programming tool. In fact, I didn't get to tell you why I love Delphi so much, and I told you the reason was
Good
V
point.
C
Well, go
plus
ahead.
plus.
Tell
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Yeah. I guess we've got
yeah,
plenty of
yeah.
time.
Yeah. So basically, so the only course that I've taken in my life. So basically a self-taught developer, right? Because software was always fun. I always read books. Of course, and the first, after basic, the first language that I learned was C, right? And then I learned C++. Uh, and then, I learned VC++. And the reason I love Delphi is because I had a really bad affair with VC++. It was so bad. I was like, how can anyone program in this tool, right? It was so bad. And then you see Delphi, right? It's like it's like you're watching this monstrosity, and suddenly a beautiful woman comes walking to you. What are you going to do? You're obviously going to fall in love with her, right? So that's exactly what happened. The reason I love Delphi is because I've been through the pain of VC++, and then I saw
Yeah.
Delphi, and Delphi made it so easy, so natural, uh, to write software, and till date,
And
and I
rock solid as well. That was the thing.
and raw and
For me,
exactly, exactly.
it just works, and that's it. I'm absolutely on the same page as you. I mean, I was a C programmer. I worked on Unix systems at the system level. I can compile kernels and code on them and weird stuff like that over the years. I was a COBOL programmer, for a long time as well. That was the only language I got taught formally to program in COBOL. But it's exactly the same thing. I saw Delphi on the day it was released, and I'm like, that is how it should be. That makes it easy to do things. C++ I never used. I did do Visual Basic, which actually had some similarities, I think, but the language itself was you could really get yourself tied in knots with Basic because there was no formality in the way that the languages work. Whereas Niklas Wirth, when he designed Pascal, he knew what he was doing. But it's the same thing. I just look at. I always make jokes about C++, and I've got to stop doing it because otherwise it's difficult for me to represent C++ builder. But I am a Delphi guy first and foremost. And I always say the thing about C++ is it just seems like everything's so hard to do, and
I totally
this stuff here when you just need that bit. I get it, but it is the microscope to someone else using a magnifying glass. If you want to drive the machine absolutely optimally, that every single line of code is the most close to the hardware it can be, then C++ is your guy. But if you want to do exactly that, but do it the easy way, then use Delphi. That's my idea. Why is C++ like this? One day I may end up chatting to Björn Strustrup, who is the inventor of C++. And I don't think he's ever going to agree to talk to me again. But he spoke to David I in the past. But yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand why C++ exists, and people that like it are fanatical about it. It's the best. Because it's C with objects. I liked C. I loved C. I thought it was it's just like assembly language, but a high level. But Delphi, yeah. I mean, come on. It's the easy way of doing things.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, we're running out of time. Stick around because I'll chat with you in the chat window afterwards. But I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to meet the developer, Nirav, and Kaku. Japanese style.
That's exactly
exactly. Arigato. And your company name is down here, and visit it. I've got a lot of respect for Nirav. I think he's a great guy. We've talked in the past about all sorts of things, but thanks for spending the time to come and talk to me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Love being here.
No worries. That was Nirav, and you can go to his website and find out more about him, and we will be doing some more Meet the Developer another time. But for now, thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.